presented by BF Goodrich. You picked the event, and it actually takes place in Indonesia. So we're going to watch the final from last year's Corona Bali Protected between Stephanie Gilmore and Sally Fitzgibbons. All right. So for this week's Rear View presented by BF Goodrich, we have the final of the 2019 Corona Bali Protected with then number 5 ranked Stephanie Gilmore and number 6 ranked Sally Fitzgibbons. It says that on the screen, so no insight there. You mentioned you've been a fan of the WSL. How long have you been a fan of the WSL for? And when did you start? And why did you get into it?
I have been a fan since I started surfing, which is not long ago, but yeah, about 5.5 years. And just because I wanted to see ladies shred and just to, like I said before, absorb all of the shreddy goodness of, surfing. And I think it's funny because, people would not peg me for somebody who watches the championship tour. And I do. Like I watch it. I have like we have a fantasy group, me and my husband and our friends. And they're healthcare providers and like professors or whatever. And we watch and we like bet on who's going to win. And me and my husband are super competitive about it.
Who wins more money, you or your husband?
I do. But yeah, like I was at a party recently with my bros, Chad and Mike, which they
sound
names.
Like bros.
And we were talking about just something crazy Kelly Slater had done. And this guy is like, what are you? Some kind of surf fanatic? Like, how do you know all this stuff? And so I just think it's really funny that people might think that like I couldn't possibly watch the WSL or pay attention to what's going on.
Well, it's funny, right? So I think the work thing's funny because I'm always saying when they're like, hey, we need to schedule the finals on the weekend. I'm like, no. Like our audience wants to watch instead of working or instead of going to school. Like if they surf and like the weekends are traditionally their days off, like they want to get outside. Like we need to be running these things like on the weekdays. Like that's what we want to be doing. So I think that's a good point from we watch it at work. And the second thing too is that
don't tell
your boss, don't tell your teacher or your mom. But I think the thing too is like at the end of the day, I just think it's simple. It's like these are the best surfers in the world. Who doesn't want to watch it? It's free. Like whether you ever compete or not, it's still like I just want to watch the world's best do their thing. Now I think if I may slander my place of employment. Over the years, I think we've worked very hard to put a ton of shit between that and like what the user gets. And I think we're getting better at it. But it's like at the end of the day, it's just objectively the best surfers surfing against each other. So that's kind of what I want to see.
Right. Like, yeah. I mean, that's why I watch it. I want to see like Steph Gilmore get all flowy and like, I don't know. It's just, and we watch with our friends. And so that's why fantasy is really cool. Cause like I said, it's cool. That sounds so silly, but it actually like makes me want to watch it more. Otherwise, I'm not sure I would be so into it, but like I'm betting some.
Exactly. And I think the other thing too, cause like we've talked about kind of gambling and like we have a fantasy game and Fantasy Surfers had a fantasy game and I've been playing since they probably came out. And I'm in a couple of leagues and people are like, you have an unfair advantage. I'm like, you'd think I'd have an unfair advantage, but like, I do terrible at fantasy. Like, I'm on the verge of like having to go unscrew people's fins to like give myself an advantage on site. But like, I think what'll happen, I'll be like, nah, that guy didn't like answer my email. Fuck him. And everyone's like, well, I picked him and he won the event. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's my problem with it. But I do think fantasy makes like, it's like anything else. Do you play fantasy in other sports? Like fantasy?
No, it's that. And that's the weird thing. I was thinking about that because I watch basketball. I grew up playing that and I really love it. I love watching the Warriors and whatnot, but I would never join like a fantasy, like basketball or football group just because there's too many teams, first of all. I think that's part of it. I can't even wrap my mind around how people figure all of that out.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to have like favorites, right? And you mentioned Steph Gilmore. Do you have any other over the last 5 years on the women's side of things that have stood out for you?
Yeah, I love Carissa
Mm,
Moore. Everybody loves Carissa. She's just such a powerhouse, and um, she's she seems like such a good person
I
too.
think you're right. I think she's a good
That comes
person.
across on
Yeah.
screen. Um, and who else do I love? I love Tyler
Mm.
Wright. She like I can't even believe like her
Oh
comeback
yeah.
this past year. Um, just incredible to watch her surf and the resilience of you know of her health and her strength. Who else do I love?
Get a
Trying to
goofy footer in there.
think.
Come on, let's get one for the team.
Uh, Goofy fiddle.
Carolyn. There
Carol
you go.
Carolyn
Yeah.
Marks. Um, I really enjoy watching her surf. Tati is great too. But I also like folks that aren't on the
Go
tour.
on. Let's name some names. I like folks that are on the tour.
Um, I like ladies that are doing their own thing, Jaleesa
Oh yeah.
Vincent, she's pretty rad. Leah
Leah's awesome.
Dawson. Um, yeah, she's an inspiration. Who else? Frankie Harhar. I just like women who are doing their own thing and making their own like moves and surfing,
They're
whatever they're putting out there that's like creative and just kind of like going against the grain
well,
as
then
well.
also they're not unlike you. Like I think a lot of them are just like they have a passion for surfing. They're doing their own thing and they're working too. Like when I met Leia, she was working on the production side of things on the Triple Crown, and we were just like talking about surfing. And then I remember seeing her at Rocky Les. I'm like, you were so good. Like you're such a good surfer. And she's like, yeah, I love it. And then she puts out these edits, and she's just this amazingly gorgeous, powerful surfer. And it's like, yeah, she's just doing her thing. She's working to surf and surfing to work kind of deal.
Yeah, I love it. I love seeing all of these ladies like films that they're putting out. It just no, it's really exciting to see, and also like I said earlier, it really helps in my journey as like a surfer. I get to like watch and see how they're surfing, and try to absorb it and like learn from them a bit from the screen.
Now, in your travels to Indonesia, and I would imagine just minimal time on the island of Bali, have you ever been to Keramas?
I've never surfed Keramas. I usually surf like a little north of, yeah, never Keramas. Always seemed just, I don't know
It's
why.
packed, isn't
Maybe
it? Like
because of
that's
the
kind of yeah.
crowd. Like, I don't know.
We I went for the 2008 Rip Curl Pro Search event, which was at Uluwatu, and Keramas kind of hadn't been put on the map yet. Like a few surfers at that event were like, "Hey, we're going to go to the east side and we're going to like surf this wave, and it's amazing." And everyone's like, "Oh, cool! It's a right. It's awesome." And then we went again when Oakley had their event. I think it was 2000. I want to say 13. Anyway, we were there and it was just packed, And I think that's the thing about like traveling around on tour. It's like you've got 50 of the most best surfers ever. They're all in the lineup. I'm like, this is the last place you want to surf. But they had
Right.
this like night surfing kind of party event like on the beach at Keramas, and I didn't go. And they canceled the event the next day before the party was called on, so people could kind of like cut loose and whatever. And the head judge at the time, Richie Porter and myself, were like, well, we're not going to go. We'll just have dinner. And we should still go to the event site in the morning. Like he still had to go and like officially call it off on the broadcast kind of thing. And we turned up and it was high tide, which is kind of the tide you need for Keramas, 3 to 5 feet. And there wasn't a single person in the water. And so he's like, oh my God. So like my first and only session at Keramas was like 3 to 5 feet with no one out. And then after that, I'm like, I don't think I can surf here
Wow.
anymore because it's just not going to get worth it.
Yeah. That sounds like a dream. Any break that's warm and consistent and, you know, perfect peelers, nobody out. That's a
I
dream.
think that's like a huge draw for like a lot of the people on the CT. I think they're often saying, whether it's like John or Chris or whoever, they're like, oh yeah, the best thing about being on tour is I can serve, J Bay with like one other person out, or like Honolulu Bay with one other person out. I just can't get it like outside of it. And you can't put like a price tag on that.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously have no experience with that, but my friends that do contests around here, like longboard contests or whatever, they often say, you should join just so you can surf the break on your own. And I'm like, I don't know.
Have you given any thought to competing?
Oh,
No?
no. Nah. No, 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 no. I've done one contest and it was a foam ball contest. It was foam boards only. And actually I've done two. But yeah, they were both like longboard foam board contests, but never like seriously or competitively. I'm too old for that. But I love to watch people, and I hope that we can inspire the next Grom that's like the Serena Williams of surfing. I hope that that's what comes of textured waves. That some little girl's like, oh my God, I could be way better than these chicks. I'm going to start when I'm like 5 and,
I'm sure you're already
be
doing
world
that through
champion.
textured waves. We're probably just doing it from surfing around Santa Cruz as well. I think people take note of it in a big way.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, actually, since we put out our little film, some little girls have reached out to me and they've, taken up surfing and wanted to meet me. So that was cool. Yeah. So I think, for some grums or youngsters, just seeing somebody that kind of resembles them is important. I was a TV double in Nova Scotia, so I got to surf
Oh, cool.
there last couple of years. And it's this small town called Preston, North Preston, and it's actually a Black community there, and it's close to the coast where there's really great surfing. And after that show aired, um, the local community or local surf school started like an after school program for like, girls of color or whatever to get in the water. And when I went back to film, I got to surf with some of them. And it was the first time they had, seen a Black woman surfing. So that was like super important. And I think that, having that imagery and representation is important when you're younger, because sometimes it's hard to imagine yourself achieving that if you don't see it.
Oh, I mean, completely. I wanted to talk about this too. Even kind of on the equality side, gender equality at the WSL over the last few years, it started with kind of investment in quality waves like Keramas or, Lowers was on tour, Fiji was on tour, and it really kind of elevated the women's side of the CT. I think probably before you were watching it, and I was on tour, working on tour, they didn't always have the best waves or the best conditions. So they kind of invested in that.
Yeah.
Then they invested in prize money. And, what we've been talking about a lot lately in the sense of achieving true equality between men's and women's surfing on tour, is that there's still a number discrepancy, right? There's 36 men on tour and 18 women. But for us, it's kind of like a top down, bottoms up approach that we need to take, because the top that we've been investing at in terms of quality waves and prize money is probably in a good spot, but we need to invest in the bottom to kind of grow that pool. We just kind of don't have 36 elite talents yet. And I wonder if there's any parallels in the sense of inspiring kind of, diversity in terms of, race or sexuality or anything in terms of balance. And if Textured Waves was approaching it from that perspective too, because you guys obviously are developing a very high level platform with your films and inspiring a lot of people, but developing interest from young women of color to take up surfing sounds like something that you're pursuing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole goal of this, right? Is that none of us are, trying to be professional surfers. We're not trying to like be, insta famous or something like that. It's about seeing that representation in what we didn't see when we were younger. Had we maybe seen it, when we were younger, maybe it would have encouraged us to start earlier. And I think that we can't discount like what imagery provides, those subliminal messages that it sends to people, whether they're conscious or unconscious of what they're seeing. So yeah, I mean, that's part of our mission, and we really just want to be a positive example.
Well, I think it's such a long-term plan too, right? I mean, even if you're looking at the two women in this heat with like Sally and Steph, like they came out of a development system in Australia where there were Australian world champions before them, and there was this very, very strong like pro junior qualifying series development system for them to grow through. And the Australian women on tour have been so good for so long. And I think that's kind of part of it, right? Where it's like, well, it doesn't change overnight. Like we really have to build this infrastructure for the long game. And it's interesting, you can kind of look at on the men's side with Brazilian surfing's been the same on the men's side, but the women haven't enjoyed the same thing over there. We have a couple of women from Brazil that are succeeding, but certainly not en masse like the men are.
Right. Yeah, and there's a lot of ripping women in Brazil, though. So I often wonder why that is. That maybe it's a sponsorship thing, maybe it's a, an encouragement thing of like maybe I don't know what it is, but I see them. I see the young Groms in Brazil that I think are worthy of being on tour or having a chance. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it is really, really tricky because especially when you're looking at a global sport, you're dealing with different countries and different cultures and sort of institutional systems that you have to, there's not, I guess, kind of one approach that you can be like, well, that's going to work everywhere, and it's so unique. Right. And I'm sure there's parallels to what you and your colleagues are doing at Textured Waves.
Totally. I totally agree with that. And even like here in Indonesia, there's like ripping ladies there too. And hopefully, we're breaking down some barriers, for women worldwide, and they can, follow suit and, have their own platforms where they create awareness of what's going on in their area. But for us too, we always want to like stress that we're talking to or talking about people in the States when we talk about like diversity, just because that's what we know. We're familiar with that, what the barriers are here. So people always say, well, what about Brazil? What about Senegal? What about all these other places? But here in the States, we have a particular, very institutionalized issue with access, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that specificity comes up all the time. A few years ago, amazing surfer, Mikey February from South Africa qualified for the CT. And there was all this conversation in the building of like, this is the first black person to qualify, it's the first black person to qualify. And then it's, well, the US wasn't the only place that engaged in slavery, like Brazil did as well. And there's people of African descent that have come through Brazil, and there's people on tour that have African descendancy. And how do you qualify this, and how do you do something that is just honest in a lot of ways, and each country is unique, unfortunately, in that sense.
Yeah. Mikey is like hero for all of us. We, I love Mikey February. He's got such great style and just he seems like a cool dude that's just chill. And I can always, I don't know, like in his films, you can tell that he's very intentional about like his music and everything. And I don't know, he just exudes a good vibe. Well, and I think he is a positive example for, the next generation to look to, regardless of where you are.
Totally. Yeah. And I got the good fortune of getting to know him a little bit when he was on tour, and he's definitely a really good guy. He's an amazing surfer. And he's also someone that, has had to wrestle in a very human way with the expectations of a lot of people because of that, and kind of like find his truth through that in a lot of ways, where it's like, I just want to be regarded as a good surfer, agnostic of, the color of my skin. And but at the same time, I understand that I have this responsibility. It's not easy at all for someone like him.
Yeah.
Who else on the men's side of the tour do you like, just from a surfing perspective?
Let's see. Well, of course I love John.
Who doesn't?
Like it's hard. I know, right? That's like a no-brainer. Who do I always pick on my teams? I have to think about that. I mean, I watch a lot of surfing that's not tour related too. So some of my favorite surfers are like Craig Anderson and like groovy surfers that sometimes I feel like you don't have that level of ability to like express yourself in that sort of way. I feel like you're, on tour, it's very much, you know, you're doing things to get points or whatever. And like, it's very calculated, it seems. But yeah, obviously I like Kelly Slater. uh, Oh, I like Connor Coffin. Who else? I don't
I think
know.
I like the point you made about the experimentation thing, because that's something that comes up a lot on this podcast. A couple weeks ago, I was asking Kalia Moniz about it, just on the longboard side of things. She's like, "Oh yeah," she's like, "We're always experimenting on the longboard side of things in terms of equipment." And I've talked to any of the CT surfers that come through. I always ask them, I'm like, "Hey, like, do you ever just want to like ride a fish or ride a quad or like ride a different kind of board to experiment?" And so few of them are into it because they're worried about like, well, I can't lose a step at all against the CT surfers.
Yeah.
Like if the waves are really bad, like I'm riding my Ferrari. And if the waves are really good, like I'm riding my Ferrari. And it's like, oh man, that's so gnarly. And when you think back at, surfers like Dane Reynolds or even Kelly Slater, who are comfortable being like, I'm going to ride a dumpster diver in my heat or an MTFA, or I'm going to ride a wizard sleeve or whatever it is. Like they're able to experiment and draw different lines. I think it makes them better surfers in a lot of ways. But it certainly makes them more relatable, right? Than sort of, I won't even name the surfers, but like just the surfers who you're like, I've never seen that person on anything but like a stickered up thruster in a jersey. And it's so funny because it kind of goes to the quarantine point before, where it's like, they're surfers. Like who they are as competitive surfers, that's just like a fraction of who they are as like an actual surfer. And who they are as a surfer is just kind of a fraction of who they are as a human being. And I think the more dimensionalized you can get, the better it is. And I can imagine that's why people gravitate towards people like Craig and Mikey, because it's like, hey, this feels like a real human being, and I like the way they surf.
Yeah. I mean, I also like Owen Wright. I'm trying to think of other folks, but yeah, I usually always choose like Owen Wright on my team if he's available.
That's right. He's a good investment. I mean, but I think kind of even in that sense, like a lot of the people you were naming on both the men's and women's side, they're people that are pretty vulnerable. They're not inaccessible in the sense of like, cool, I understand that person, like kind of who they are and what they're about. And I mean, Jesus, at the CT level, they all surf well. Like it's always I always tell people, I used to watch when I was in college, before I started working at the ASP. And it's like, you're watching with your friends and you're like, that person sucks. Like, yeah, that da 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 da. And it's like, you turn up to these events. I remember the first time being like, the lowest ranked person on tour is literally the best surfer I've ever seen in my entire life. Like hands down. You're just like the speed and the power. I'm like, oh my God. It's like, which to me always spoke to like, if that guy or that girl is that good, then the people that I think are like way, way better, who are at the top of the rankings, are just kind of like another species.
Yeah. I mean, even like, I see Nat Young sometimes.
That's great.
Here in Santa Cruz. And one time I don't know if he noticed me, but it was so small and just terrible. And, he's a super nice dude. And like, that's how you can tell somebody's really good, because they don't even, they're not going to be weird if like somebody like me is like at the break and, it's really small and they're not going to give you crap.
At Waddell.
That's how I always can tell if somebody is like a really good surfer as well. They're like, they don't care. They'll surf around you, or they're still really nice.
What about, I remember hearing this like a while ago. I think like Dane Reynolds gave like a Monster Children interview, and they were like, what's a kook? And he's like, he goes, a kook has nothing to do with your surfing ability at all. He goes, it's all about self-awareness. He goes, you can be a total beginner, and if you know you're a beginner, like you are not a kook at all. He goes, I know surfers that are pretty good who are total kooks because they think they're like way better than everybody else and way better than they actually are. And I'm like, that's the best definition I've ever heard of a kook.
Yeah, I think that's true too. Like just knowing where you are and your ability, and like, yes.
Well, we're getting down to the end of this heat. I think if I remember right, it may have just happened, but I might have you walk us through the replay, because I think this is one of your girls, Steph Gilmore, and I think she just nailed a 10. If I remember right.
That was like the best part of the
Yeah,
heat.
good. We woke up just in time for it. This is perfect. Here we go. Walk us through.
Is this it? Oh my gosh. Oh, I don't know if I'm good at this. Oh, there's Steph. She's doing her thing. There she tucks into the barrel. Is she gonna make it? Oh my God, she made it out. Oh, slashes the lip.
You're hired. This is the best commentary I've
I'm
heard.
hired. I'm a commentator. Watch out, Peter.
That's right. I'm coming by Freeline Surf Shop. I'm taking your job. I'm gonna drink your milkshake. I'm gonna get Peter to like do something on the social medias with this for sure. It's amazing. Like I was looking at this before, like, so this is 2019 was Steph's 13th year on tour, and it was Sally's, I screwed it up, 11th. And for me, since I've been on tour the whole time, I remember when they were like, we all started and like we were all younger, they were like really young. And I always still think of them as being so young. And then I was listening to this heat before, and like the commentators like, these are veterans, Steph and Sally. And I'm like, they're just like kids. Like, what are you talking about? Like, but they have been on tour for so long, and it is impressive.
Yeah. Sally's also like a beast. You know, she's, you know, with all those injuries she's had. When I was looking at heats to replay or we would watch, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to pick one of Sally's heats. Like she's just like going out with a ruptured eardrum and then like her arm breaking. Like, I don't know. She's pretty tough.
She's super
really
tough.
inspiring to watch.
I remember vividly her rookie season, which would have been 2009. And she and Steph, actually no, Steph was writing for Rip Curl at the time, and Sally was writing for Roxy at the time. And she was like the young rookie. And we had this round at D-Ball, which was our backup site, and it was small. And Sally got this wave and just blitzed the thing, got like a high 9. And I remember everyone being like, wow, she's going to win like 10 world titles. And it was one of those things. I think Steph as a surfer has done such a good job of reinventing herself to keep beating people. Like it's really, really hard to do in sport.
Yeah. I mean, sign of great athlete, right? And she just seems to do it with such ease. I know it's not easy, but it feels easy when I'm watching.
Like
her.
everything she does, like play the guitar, like what, you know, dress cool. I'm like, everything seems so easy. Like, I don't know, it's really hard for me.
Oh man, that was sick wave.
Yeah. Amazing. Do you think Steph's got more world titles in her when we eventually come back? Because she's got Carissa, she's got Tyler, she's got Carolyn, she's got all these challengers now.
I know. That's what makes it so exciting, though. Like, yeah, I think that's what makes the tour so exciting is that the women's tour is getting so competitive, and it just feels like you don't know who's going to win. And everybody's so strong. Even, you know, I think Lakey's up there too. She's another one of my faves because she started later in life too. So that's really like, I think that's crazy that she started like when she was 12 or 13 or something. And most people are starting when they're 5.
It is crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's going to be super exciting once the tour can get back on. And, you know, I'm definitely ready to win some money.
Do you like that? Well, if so, subscribe over there and then watch more videos over there. And then tell us your favorite videos down there. It's a 3-step process. Do them all now.